Yep, here we are again, reviewing yet another awful superhero movie. And this one actually isn't that bad, but it was either between this or Red One, so go figure. Anyways, to start things off, this movie is a lot worse than what you remember it was. I can't believe that there are people out there that watched this movie and liked it, because this movie was supposed to be to the DCEU what Iron Man 1 was to the MCU. And we all know that this movie didn't go anywhere. I really can't believe that after so long we are finally seeing another live action Green Lantern. This movie really put Green Lantern so far in the bin that they didn't even show Hal Jordan or John Stewart in the live action Justice League movie. But anyways, let's start off with what I like about this movie, because there isn't a whole lot that I like about it. First off, for a movie that was released in 2011, I think, it looks pretty bad, but one thing I gotta give this movie credit for is I'm surprised on how comic accurate this movie is for the most part. See, most movies around this time were copying the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, and what I mean by that is most studios were making movies about comic book characters, but they were just completely making shit up. I mean, Catwoman is a perfect example of this.
You boys thought you could come in here and steal all these beautiful things? What a perfect idea.
And also, I'm pretty sure some of these scenes are out of order, but that's something I'll get into later. However, for what it's worth, I'm actually surprised this movie showed Oa, the planet where the Green Lantern Corps are from. They even show the Guardians, who are the immortals who harness the energy of will to create a Green Lantern ring, and yeah, that sounds stupid, but it's actually pretty cool. I'm actually surprised the studio went ahead and showed Kilowog, Tomar Ray, Sinestro, Abin Sur, Parallax, the Guardians, and all these other lanterns. Let's just say you probably wouldn't see this much world building that's this comic accurate, especially for a character like Green Lantern from a movie that came out in 2011. Now, surprisingly, that's all I like about this movie, if I'm being honest, so let's talk about the shitty ass narrative. So to start things off, we are introduced to Hal Jordan and his dad, but don't get too attached to his dad because he's about to die. Now, I watched this movie as a kid, but one thing that I don't remember is that around this time we were introduced to Hector.
Oh, hey, Hector.
Hey, so, I have this book.
Who will soon be the second antagonist or the second villain. And this guy's motives for hating Hal Jordan is that Hal Jordan gets to the girl that Hector wanted. Now again, that's not a bad motive, but it is pretty petty. And it doesn't help us understand why Hector wants Hal Jordan dead when Hector eventually becomes a big fucking head of death. Anyways, like I said, Hal Jordan's dad dies, but before his dad's death, this movie goes ahead and introduces us to the fucking Green Lantern Corps. And one thing I don't like about this movie is how it immerses us into Oa so early on, because we should not be hearing about Oa right now. It's not important to the narrative right now either. Then 3 idiots go ahead and wake up Parallax from his jail prison thing, and then he's free. Presumably, from what I can gather, is Parallax has been out and about for 20 years. And I want you to remember that he's been free for 20 years because it's gonna make more sense later. Then after his dad dies, we see Abin Sur, which if you're not familiar with in the comics, this guy dies also.
Hey, come on, man. No, don't do that. Hey, no, don't.
Yo, come on, man. I can't have shit in this.
But he doesn't die right away. He fights Parallax because Parallax jumps him, and then Abin Sur leaves the Earth. And yeah, the visuals look awful on him, but I'm guessing the studio didn't bother polishing up his CGI since he's only in the movie for like 5 minutes anyway. Anyways, now we're 14 minutes into the movie and we finally meet the main character in present day. Then 3 idiots go ahead and wake up Parallax from his jail prison thing, and then
I slept in.
I used to sleep in, then I turned 11.
Starts a conversation like that. I just said.
anyways, these two have a dogfight with 2 drone jets or Sabretooth, and during this dogfight, we're led to believe that Blake Lively or Carol dies, and we're led to believe this because Hal Jordan fucking uses her as a decoy to try to get an angle on the drone jets. And while I'm explaining this to you, you might be thinking to yourself that this is kind of pointless, and you'd be right. However, the movie wants to remind us when Hal Jordan lost his dad in the jet accident. I mean, you remember how 10 minutes ago though the movie just showed us Hal Jordan's dad dying. Yeah, well now they're telling us this part of his life again. I should probably mention Blake doesn't die, which is kind of unfortunate because her character doesn't serve any purpose here other than to make Hector mad at Hal Jordan. Then we get this long conversation about how most of the company has to be laid off because Hal's stupid ass went ahead and destroyed all 4 of those jets. And after that, Hal Jordan is late to some kid's party, and we finally see Hal Jordan be selected for the Green Lantern Corps. And also, I should remind you that at this point in the movie, we are 30 fucking minutes into the actual movie. And yes, the effects still look awful. Abin Sur is still here, and he gives Hal Jordan the ring as his dying wish instead of calling for help. This is Oa's strongest and most brightest lantern, I should mention. Then we finally meet Hector, and he is selected to do an autopsy on Abin Sur when Hector gets infected with that yellow shit. Now this is the part of the movie that pisses me off, because why do we have 2 antagonists? Because we keep cutting back and forth to Oa to planet Earth to either hear about Hal Jordan's bullshit or Parallax coming up for Oa. The movie would have done much better if you just gotten rid of Hector, honestly. Because his motives are pretty petty, and he's also only a threat to normal human beings, and he just doesn't serve a point in this movie. Oh, and Hal Jordan is arguing with his engagement ring and the green lamp, and then we finally see those stupid fucking eyes.
Night. No evil shall escape my sight.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
Then Hal Jordan gets jumped from those people that got laid off from the place that he works at. Then he decides it'd be a great idea to throw rocks at them. And then this shit happens. Which is actually one of the few moments in the movie where the CGI with Hal Jordan looks good. And then finally, we get to see Hal Jordan go to Oa. I think most people probably would have liked this movie more if it got to this point in the movie much quicker, because like I said, you don't need Hector in this movie. You don't need that 10-minute dogfight with Carol, and you shouldn't show us Oa as the first scene in the movie, because it's stupid as fuck, because we keep cutting back and forth from Parallax to Oa to Hal Jordan and Carol and fucking Hector and his bullshit with his family. There is way too much screen time for characters that we don't give a shit about at this point in the movie. And the reason why I say that we shouldn't have been shown Oa yet is because when we finally see Oa from Hal Jordan's point of view, it's underwhelming as shit because we've already seen this place before. In fact, we've been cutting back to this stupid fucking planet for over an hour. Also, this is where the dumbest shit in the movie happens. So Hal Jordan is uplifted to Oa, and this happens to him. I don't even know what I'm looking at. And also, I wasn't kidding about every other character looking good minus fucking Hal Jordan. Why is it the main character is the only one that looks bad in these shots? I mean, it's just crazy. It's almost an hour into this movie and the main character finally has his powers. Whatever, anyways. After all of this, the main character is finally being trained.
Here, let me help you. Remember.
And also, can we stop cutting back to this bullshit? I can't say it enough. Just stop cutting back to Hector. I fucking hate seeing him. Oh yeah, and a bunch of Green Lanterns go and try to fight Parallax and they all die. Oh, and remember how I said to remember how Parallax has been out for like 20 years or so? Well, that's because Sinestro returns to Oa because he was the only one to survive that attack on Parallax, and he proceeds to say that Parallax was heading to Oa. Now I just want to remind you that Parallax, right, was once a guardian. That this little broken throne right here, that used to be his. So you're telling me that Parallax has been out for like 20 years or so and still hasn't made it to Oa, yet Hal Jordan can just fly there and be there in 2 fucking seconds. Also, I don't know what Sinestro means by Parallax was flying to Oa, because in the next scene that we see of him, he's right next to Earth, because for some fucking reason he really wants that ring of Abin Sur.
You are the ring of the lantern that imprisoned me.
I just can't with this fucking movie. So the reason why I said this movie feels like it has scenes out of order, well, that's because in this scene right here, Sinestro tells us that Parallax is coming to Oa.
Tracked its trajectory. Parallax is headed for Oa.
However, in this scene, we see right here, we see Parallax is right outside Earth. But then we get this scene of Hal explaining to Carol and this guy of what has been happening to him. Then we see Hal Jordan show up to the Guardians fucking place and he proceeds to say this.
Let me go fight for my world, and I'll show you that will is stronger than fear.
However, we just saw Parallax right outside Earth. So why would Hal Jordan fly to Oa whenever there's a big fucking yellow cloud right outside his fucking planet just to ask the Guardians for permission to go fight for his world, even though he was just on his planet? And again, Parallax is not going to Oa, and instead he is going to kill Hal just because he's wearing the ring of Abin Sur. And also in the next scene we see of Parallax, we see him flying to Earth, even though he was right outside Earth. Then we see Hal Jordan right outside Earth and Parallax isn't there. I just can't with this fucking movie, man. Hector and Hal meet again, and then we see Hal actually use his fucking brain for once. The movie is about to wrap up, and we finally see this jackass be clever for once in his life. But before that, Hector's big plan to ruin Hal's life is turning Carol into whatever Hector is.
I told you, nigga, this ain't it, Chief.
Oh yeah, and then Hector dies. What a great way to send off a main character. Like I said a million times already, I just think it would have been better if Hector wasn't in this movie, because his character is so fucking useless. And I promise you, I will talk about these awful shots, just let me finish the movie first. So after Hector's death, we proceed to see a million more people die as they try to look at the fucking huge alien in the sky. And yeah, these scenes with Hal Jordan conjuring all this cool artillery does look okay, but it does feel weird because we have not seen Hal Jordan really use his ring that much at all. The only time he has really used his ring was in the training clip, the race car scene, the fight with Hector, and now this. But it just feels like he got the hang of his ring way too quickly. It doesn't feel like he's earned being a Lantern because the movie just decided to not expand on his character, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Then Green Lantern decides to fight Parallax in space, and this is probably the worst CGI I have ever seen in a superhero movie. Relative to the year it was released, I've seen a lot worse CGI. Also again, how is it possible that Hal Jordan and Parallax can just stand right next to the sun? Like, do you seriously have to be within 5 feet of the sun to start burning up? Whatever. Anyways, Green Lantern kills Parallax because he has no moral compass, or any morals for that matter, and these guys find him. So we're led to believe that these three were just stood here and watched Hal Jordan fight Parallax. And then we get another Sinestro speech and a bunch of bullshit from the other characters. Sinestro turns yellow as the end credit scene because this movie thought it was getting a sequel, but we're all thankful that didn't happen. Anyways, now let's talk about why this movie is worse than you remember. I mean, it is in the title of the video anyways. So to start things off, there are way too many fucking characters. And what I really mean by that is that we see way too much screen time on characters we just don't ever give a shit about. Hector is the main example of this, but also the fucking agency guys, they get way too much screen time for my liking and it never goes anywhere. And again, the lanterns from Oa look great, but we should have not seen a lantern until Hal Jordan got his powers. I personally think that would have been better for the movie, because like I said, it just ruins the feeling of immersing us into this brand new world of Oa. Also, Sinestro was pretty fucking lame. For a leader, he really didn't do anything besides argue with the Guardians and give a pep rally speech. And again, why were they beating the fuck out of Hal Jordan? Is that just an initiation or something? Kilowog and Tama Ray were cool. However, Lanterns should have gotten a bit more screen time than the fucking normal humans This movie is called Green Lantern, so show me more lanterns. I would much rather spend 2 hours watching a movie about creatures I've never seen before than boring ass bankruptcy and characters that die in horrible ways. Hector. Again, Hector does not need to be in here. Carol, again, was just here because I gave Hector a reason to hate Hal, which again is fucking petty. Carol and Hal honestly should have just already been in a relationship before all that shit happens to Hal. It would have been more interesting seeing Hal have a girlfriend than seeing Hal use his girlfriend as a decoy and shit. Parallax. While Parallax was an interesting character with his backstory and all, I think having a character that is all bad without expanding on him doesn't really work for me. He doesn't seem like much of a threat because he's really only a threat whenever the movie needs him to be. His only motives for this movie are chasing after Abinsur's ring. That doesn't make a character interesting, it just makes him boring as hell and forgettable. But I don't think anyone is going to forget this god-awful looking character, not even Clancy Brown. Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan is a much more interesting character than you might think. First of all, I can't wrap my head around why the studio hired Ryan Reynolds to play a hot-headed character without writing a hot-headed character. The character of Hal Jordan from the comics is much more hot-headed. He's stupid as shit, but his intentions are always for those that he cares about. And we later learn that's why the Ring chose him, but we don't really see why the Ring chose Hal in this movie, because in this movie Hal really isn't hot-headed. He's just fucking stupid. He doesn't really seem to care about people either. He just kind of seems to care about Carol. And that's about it. But that's kind of a stretch because who in the actual hell uses their partner as a decoy just to win a dogfight? That's not hot-headed. It's just stupid. And lastly, the visuals. The visuals are fucking awful. The pacing is what I thought to be the worst thing about this movie, but above the shitty color grading and awful lighting and horrible CGI, there's one thing that manages to be worse than them all, and that is the CGI effects. Again, why did you give him contacts? Just make his eyes white. Was it really that hard to key out all of the rest? But I think the movie choosing to have its fight scenes in broad daylight is what makes the CGI look worse, because whenever it's dark, it looks much better. And also, why is it that the studio can make every other lantern that doesn't resemble a human look good, but can make every other creature look cool as shit? Also, my only explanation for this movie costing $200 million, yeah, I know, is that I imagine the studio went ahead and shot the entire movie and then realized how bad it looked and then try to save it by spending more money on the effects. But anyways, this movie was pretty bad. I probably gave it a 3 or 4 out of 10. It was a waste of time, honestly. Worst superhero tier list. That's it for this video.
You boys thought you could come in here and steal all these beautiful things? What a perfect idea.